I'm going to zoom in to the household level and to some extent also the landscape level, if I understand right, to Indonesia and the issue of water, food, and energy trade-offs.
Yeah. So thank you very much. So Alisha gave you something like an international or broad concept of this Nexus, but what I'm going to present to you is a case study in Indonesia. And the thing that I'm going to present is the rapid land transformation because of this biofuel, and then the trade-offs between ecosystem services. And I'm just going to present to you some preliminary result from the agent-based modeling and role-playing games that I implemented to really capture this local and gender perspective, and then some ecosystem service trade-offs. So why Indonesia? Well, because from 1967 to 2010, they analyzed that there was already 8.4 million hectares has been actually converted to oil palm. So if you look at, for example, if you're familiar about the area of Cologne, it's like every year they have this 5 times of Cologne area is being converted to oil palm. And because of that, Indonesia is now the world's largest producer and exporter of crude oil palm. Because of the international demand for this oil palm, you can find it already in your cosmetics, in your food, everywhere. You go to the market and you'll find now the ingredient from oil palm. And Indonesia, it overtook already the Malaysian companies that they are now #1. And not only that, they have also rubber, the natural rubber. And in fact, they are now the 2nd largest producer for rubber. And most of this area has been converted in the case of Sumatran Island. So Sumatra is one of the islands where there is this rapid conversion to oil palm and rubber. So if you have the area which is already with local communities, indigenous communities, government, so it's already contested land. And we don't know what may be economic or maybe some traditional, we'll find out. So because of that, there is this rapid conversion. And if you look at it, for the case of Sumatra, it's already changing because of this globalization. And these are the areas where already converted. At the same time, Indonesia is also a mega diversity. You'll find that there's also this Sumatran tigers, rhinos. These are important ecosystem services, and they are also something like a source of income for the communities in that area. So in this specific study that we developed, some of the forest areas has been something like stopped or it's somehow reduced from conversion, and what is now being converted is a rubber agroforest. It's the traditional farming system that is already being converted, and the emissions are getting high. So because of those processes, now Indonesia ranks 2nd when it comes to carbon emission based on deforestation and degradation. Now, what is this things going on in Indonesia? How can we, explore that in the local context? In Indonesia, for example, oil palm, which is 67% of land area, majority, there are 3 types of actors that are important in the conversion. One is the industry, industrial enterprise, which actually 70%. And the next one is the smallholder, which is somehow 27%, and 3% is only for the government. Now, in the last 2013 paper that was published by Lee, that the smallholder farmers in Indonesia is like 200 times increased or expanded their land for oil palm and rubber monoculture. So we want to understand how they are decision making and how does it affects the way they decide into land conversion. So the methodology, the process that I'm using is multi-method approach, where I look at more than landscape change, but also ecosystem service trade-offs. And what I'm going to present is actually mostly resulting from role-playing games and agent-based model. So what I did was I didn't work on a single landscape or a single area, but I look at the transactional area from the lowland to upland and I look at something like 15 different villages in that area, which compose of 726 households, and 30% of that are females. So we look at the factors that affect the land use decision. So during the methodology, we asked them how do they perceive the landscape. Based on this, we somehow asked them which of the land uses or land use types are more important to you. And there is a big difference between the lowland and upland, of course, because the lowland, there's already conversion, and they could see in that lowland aspect, you find that fragmentation is already in the minds of the people. You see, especially the male aspect. But females, they are still different. But you can find here in the upland that rice production is actually an important aspect in their landscape. But look at that, in the lowland area, there's no rice production anymore. They converted it to oil palm. Now, we asked them, what is your perception about the ecosystem services that this land use type produce? And you can see that between the upland and lowland, they have a different perception about this land use and the ecosystem services. Like, for example, the male and the female in the upland, they look at particularly the agroforestry, which is one of the traditional land use type there, as source of food, including the medicine for them. While in the lowland, different from males, females have now a different, something like a mix perception of land uses, like agroforestry, oil palm, rubber, produces ecosystem services like water supply. But we need to dig more about that to understand why they look at it. While males, of course, agroforestry is for water supply. So there is already different perception how this land use change. 5 more minutes. Okay, and then from here we ask them if there will be some actors, external actors, government or private companies offering different land use, profitable land use. And you can see that males and female have a different perceptions of land use change here. The upper part is female and males. If you compare it from the previous land use, you can see that females actually produces more dynamic. They accept more offers, or they are more dynamic in land use change. So here, the female, you can see that oil palm is already there in their landscape, that they are willing to engage. So in our, we analyze those households, and we can see that 60% of the females from the upland is more into land use change, where it might be oil palm and rubber. So in our paper, we said that females from both upland and lowland who engage actually in a role-playing game are more dynamic the way men from the same villages, reacting more positively to external investors. So we think that females are more approachable and more positive when it comes to other actors like oil palm and monoculture rubber. So what we did is, from the upland area, because upland has still high biodiversity and carbon content, we did an agent-based modeling where we look at only male, if the males are only the decision makers, and here we compare it if the female is the decision maker. So we have these two different landscape perceptions. So here is now male and this is female, and we assess how much carbon it will be produced from those land use change, and we found out that female-dominated landscape has a more carbon emission compared to males. But through time, through simulation for 20 years, we found out that females will go back to rice production. Will go back to producing more food compared to the males who are into monoculture. But we didn't find that the upland people will accept the oil palm in that study. So for take-home message, because this is still ongoing work, that gender matters in a land use decision making, and we need to look at the gender differentiated roles that might affect the ecosystem service delivery. And at the same time, the gender differentiation should be considered in policies that would address these trade-offs. So I think that's it.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it was nice and fast as well. So one or two quick questions. Quick questions, please. Okay, one.
That was a really informative presentation. I have a small query. You talked about decision making, gendered role in decision making about land use changes. These 30% women, they own their land.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the site that we are working, there is two land use systems. One is the matrilineal, and the other one is patrilineal. In the sense that females they own their rice area, so they are the decision makers when it comes to rice field. But males have the decision makers. They are the decision makers when there's a tree.
Ownership and decision making, they kind of overlap. Or sometimes
Not
if you don't
really.
own, you can still do the decision making when it is agriculture.
For males to have land, they have to plant trees. But females, through
Inheritance.
It's having this rice. So females, like if I'm the mother, I will give my rice area to my daughter or my
And
niece.
she decides.
Yes.
Not her husband.
Okay, one more.
Yeah. In the rural areas, a number of actors actually influence the decision-making
Right.
process of females, for example, like traders, even the credit providers, and the technicians. I wonder if you can say something about that in that particular case.
Yeah, what we did in the role-playing games, we mimicked those actors. We identified 5 different actors. One, the NGO, the academe, something like oil palm company, logging companies, and there is this government which is promoting watershed. And we try to mimic their targets, their objectives, and we try to have a negotiation with them and see how they will accept or not accept their negotiations or their goals. And we found that males and females, males are more conservative and females are more dynamic when it comes to different actors. So that's the way we try to model the game.